Hello there, you're welcome to HisGov TV. My name is Collins Nanayao Abebrese, and I welcome you to our history lesson for today. So, in today's discussion, we are looking at the reasons why the traditional chiefs or rulers in Africa, especially in the Gold Coast, accepted the indirect rule policy of the British during the colonial period. In our previous lesson or video, we looked at the reasons why the educated elite, on the other hand, opposed the indirect rule policy, which was adopted by the British in the Gold Coast. But then, interestingly, the chiefs accepted the policy of indirect rule. So we are going to look at the role that these traditional chiefs played in this indirect rule policy that made them to accept the whole idea of this indirect rule policy. Good. So before we begin with our discussions for today, I would like to remind you to subscribe to our channel if you are new, and if you have already subscribed to, we thank you very much for your support. We have two channels. One is called Nana Collins TV, and this current channel both talks about history, but the difference is that on this channel we are focusing solely on academics, unlike Nana Collins TV, where we have both academics and other trending stuffs. The videos here are more better off in terms of appearance than the one on the Nana Collins TV. So you can do well to subscribe to both of them. Thank you very much. So let's then start with our lessons for today. Let's go and look at our lesson objectives. So by the end of our discussions or this video, you should be able to outline some of the role of traditional chiefs in indirect rule policy. Now, it was these roles that made the traditional chiefs to embrace the policy of indirect rule. Now, had it not been these roles, if they were not playing any role or active role in the policy, I don't think that they would have accepted it, as the case was. And if you recall, in our previous video or lessons, we looked at the reasons why the educated elite in the colony did not were in opposition to the indirect rule. It was mainly because they were not included. They did not play any active role in the policy, and because of that, they rejected or opposed the indirect rule policy. On the other side, because the chiefs were part of it, they embraced the indirect policy. So let's take a look at the roles that the chiefs played in this whole policy of indirect rule. Now, the first of such role was an agent of British rule. The chiefs or local chiefs served as an agent of the British rule in the indirect rule policy. Now, local chiefs were used as agents of British rule. In other words, the local chiefs served as a link between the British colonial administration and the local people. They were charged with the responsibility of ensuring that British colonial laws and policies, were implemented at the local level. To achieve this, the powers of the chiefs were recognized and strengthened. So basically, the chiefs served as an agent of the British colonial rule. So they were to ensure that whatever the British wanted to put across to the people were implemented. So in other words, they were given some sort of power. Their position was strengthened. All right. And so that was one of the reasons why the chiefs or traditional rulers decided to accept or embrace the policy of indirect rule. They became agents of the British rule. All right, good. Let's take a look at the next point. 2 was the collection of taxes. The chiefs also accepted the British policy of indirect rule because they were allowed to collect taxes on behalf of the British. So they played a role of the collection of what? Taxes. Now, the most important function of the chiefs under the policy of indirect rule was the collection of taxes. The chiefs had no control over the local treasuries that were set up. The British authorities levied taxes on the local people, and it was the responsibility of the chiefs or their agents to collect the taxes and pay them into the treasury. The treasury also received fines and fees from the local courts. So that is also something very important. The chiefs were not the ones going around collecting the taxes, though, but in some instances, it was the agents of the chiefs. So the chiefs were empowered to collect the taxes. However, the chiefs would then, appoint somebody to go out there and collect the taxes. Now, when these taxes were collected, they were kept. The British had given them a local treasury where they must keep in the money. So the money was not going to the chiefs, but it was going to the British treasury, for the administration of the Gold Coast. And so because of that, some of the chiefs, accepted the policy because they played the role of what? The role of collecting taxes. Now, let's also take a look at the third point, or the third role played by traditional rulers in the indirect rule was the maintenance of law and order. So the chiefs, in effect, accepted the indirect rule policy because they were allowed to maintain law and what? Order. Now, another crucial role of the local chiefs was that they were supposed to maintain law and order. Courts were set up for the trial of civil and minor criminal cases such as marriage, divorce, land disputes, succession disputes, murder, among others. The traditional rulers, in addition, had police, which we refer to as ahemfie police, whose duty was to maintain law and order. So, in a way, the chiefs were also empowered to maintain law and order, and they had themselves the ahemfie police, a form of police, local police, which was to ensure that they were also to try, cases. They set up courts already. All these things, as we are talking about, were already being done by our chiefs. The collection of taxes, the maintenance of law and order, all these roles played by our chiefs were being done by our chiefs before even the coming of the Europeans. And so it wasn't new to the chiefs. Maybe if what would have been new was that if they were deprived of these roles, that would have brought about a whole issue. But since they were asked to continue, it wasn't news to them, or it wasn't anything new. And bear in mind that we said in our previous discussion or lesson that this indirect rule policy would only thrive or would only be successful in areas where there was an already existing effective or centralized system of government, and that the African people had. And so this policy was successful. So that was the reason why some of the chiefs accepted the indirect rule policy to maintain law and order. The next one had to do with the establishment of native courts. Okay, now these chiefs were also empowered to establish native courts. The native courts were established to preserve the powers of the chiefs. The chiefs or their officials played the role of presiding over the law courts. Later, they were empowered to make bylaws. Tribunals were then set up by the paramount chiefs to trial civil cases under the customary laws. Matters with regards to marriage, divorce, land, succession, were henceforth tried by the traditional rulers. So as I earlier indicated, these were roles being played by our traditional rulers before the coming of the Europeans. So they were allowed to continue to establish the native court, which we call the ahemfie. When you are taken to ahemfie or the palace, the ahemfie more or less seems like a court in those days. Yeah, because if somebody says that we are taking you to ahemfie, it looks like, yeah, you were in trouble in those days. So they were allowed to continue doing that, to trial cases under the customary laws, and that the British felt would bring about this whole peace and order in the society. Again, the last of the reasons why the chiefs embraced or accepted indirect rule was the enactment of laws. The chiefs were allowed to enact laws or make laws. Traditional rulers played a significant role in the central administration of the country. Some of the chiefs were elected into the legislative council to enact laws at the national level. Similarly, they could also make bylaws at the local levels. So if you have been following our discussions with regards to the constitutional development in the Gold Coast, we have all the constitutions available on our other channel. We will do a more refined one here, but as it stands now, it's not here. You can check that on our other channel. If you have been following our discussions, you realize that the 1916 Clifford Constitution, the 1925 Gettysburg Constitution, the 1946 Alan Barnes Constitution, you realize that the chiefs were given seats in the in the Legislative Council. The chiefs were given seats in the Legislative Council. So like Parliament today, the chiefs were also appointed to the Executive Council, the highest body in the colony. The chiefs were appointed to those areas. So the chiefs felt that the British were in favor of their good. And don't forget that they were actually had to battle it out with the educated elite, who felt that that was not the right way to go. So the chiefs, knowing that, or the traditional rulers, knowing that, oh, okay, these educated people of course want to take my position as a chief, as a leader of the people, and so they are agitating for representation and for the British to actually recognize me as a chief and giving me that appointment to be part of the Legislative Council. And don't also forget that even the chiefs had a lot of seats as compared to the educated elite. They were given more seats than the educated elite. And so all these are roles which were given to the educated elite, which were given to the traditional chiefs by the British, actually encouraged the chiefs to accept anything that the British brought, any policy or anything that they brought, because they felt that they were doing that for their good. So yeah, this is the end of our discussion. So like I earlier indicated, all these roles were already played by our chiefs. They were making laws for us or for their people before even the coming of the Europeans. And that is why we made a statement in our first in our other lesson that this policy will only thrive in areas where there was a centralized system of government. So these reasons and many more, the chiefs decided to embrace the policy of indirect rule and to work with them. All right, good. We have some questions here which are past questions. Let's see if you can try your hands on some of these past questions. It says, the first one says, highlight any 4 roles played by the local chiefs in the indirect rule system. This was a May-June WASI question in 2017. And this is a direct question, obviously. And then the second one has to do with highlight any 4 factors that encourage Ghanaian rulers to embrace the policy of indirect rule. And this was an object question in 2015. And you realize that the wordings have changed, but the points are going to be the same, and more so the explanation should also change to suit the question. All right, good. So I hope we have had a good time. Do not forget to share our video, like, subscribe, and also share. Of course, thank you very much for your time and have a nice day. Bye bye.